Hey everybody, welcome back to Ryan Jacobson Golf. So today I'm excited to go over how you can avoid hitting fat chips, which is probably everybody's least favorite thing to do around the green. All right, so really quickly, just a quick synopsis of the wedge itself. You've got your leading edge right here, and then if you hold your wedge up, you have the leading edge, you'll notice the back, there's a bit of a camber there. That's the bounce of the wedge. So some wedges have different levels of bounce on them, but just a really quick summation for these next parts of the video. When this leading edge is descending and digs into the ground, you're going to be taking a divot, you're going to be digging with it. So like that's just an important concept to get, because I'll go over the bounce a little bit later and how to use it. But I'm really going to talk about setup right now, how to help you avoid that all in the first place. So right here we have a chip that's just right off the green, really standard, like a chip, not a pitch or anything like that. So this is where I'm going to start with. And one of the things I noticed setup wise that I think I see a lot of people do when they're struggling and they're hitting their chips fat is they go ahead and they get set up. And if you notice, look at my stance and my feet width. This is like a full shot. And this is probably one of the first things I see that's going to cause you a lot of issues when you're just trying to hit chips around the green. When you've got this really wide stance, like you're going to naturally have a shallower plane with the club as it's going through, which, I mean, sometimes that can be helpful in certain shots, but it also can lead to just this. I talked about that leading edge before and how that digs in the ground. Well, if you've got a kind of shallow plane, look at all the opportunity I've got for this to catch and kind of dig. And it's not a very comfortable way to be able to take a short shot and control it. Like this is a lot of really big muscles here. So this wide stance right from the get-go is not great for chipping, and it can definitely lead to you delivering that leading edge into the ground behind the ball and hitting it a little bit fat. So the first thing I would want you to do is get your club down, and with the width of your stance, I want you to get comfortable, but like mine usually like inside shoulder somewhere. I've some people are really comfortable setting their feet almost together, but you want to bring in a more narrow stance, because when you bring in a more narrow stance, you're going to have more of an arc with your chipping stroke, and that's going to allow you to kind of hit a spot instead of kind of with a wide stance. Feel like you're grazing the ground a lot. When you bring your feet in, well, now I can have this nice little arc, and there's a very narrow window where I'm actually impacting and grazing the ground, and that's really going to help me hopefully avoid, especially if you're nervous, digging in behind the ball and dragging it. So that's step one. Setup's really important, and I don't usually like to tell people what to do with it, but it's a fundamental thing, just like I would like to ask you to hit the like and subscribe button. So this next piece is probably the most important part, because this is just good for your short game around the green in general, and it's about setup again. So I mentioned before, to avoid getting the full stance setup like you would if you were going to hit a full shot, and that also goes to how far I'm going to stand away from the ball. So this is kind of like a normal distance that would be from a ball for a full shot, and you don't want to be that far away when you're hitting short shots around the green. Like when I set up that distance for a full swing, it's because there's a lot of motions and clearing that I'm doing to deliver the club to the ball that I'm not doing in a chip. I'm trying to keep a chip as straightforward and simple as possible. So when I get much closer to the ball, this does a couple things. It keeps that heel from being low like it would in a full swing, which that heel dragging in the ground is also another thing that can shut the face and cause you to hit it fat. So I'm going to get much closer to the ball. What that does is it has a feeling almost of getting the handle up and the toe of the club down a little bit. But if you just watch here, if I've got this handle up and toe down, I'm just closer, I've got much less of that leading edge that can also dig into the ground. The club, if you just try it, will actually just slide a lot more on the grass just by standing closer to it. And then to just hit a nice little chip. So I want you to get closer to the ball right here, and then just feel this. And you're just going to be able to see that it's such an easy, almost like putting, just kind of like a little up and down, just a little up and down. And there is a teeny patch right there of where that club is grazing and impacting the grass. It's down and up. Okay, so now that we've got like setup, which is honestly the most important thing, so you can just have a better path and avoid even having a chance to really chunk the wedge. Now I'm going to talk about bounce and leading edge, because this is also really important too, because really this comes more in line with your lie and the turf that you're on more than anything. Like if this is really wet, soft grass right here, Like, so I want to be able to manipulate this wedge so that I have a better chance of being able to hit a shot that I want. And that's where the bounce comes in handy. So this is my sand wedge. It's got 10 degrees of bounce. So kind of like an average, not a lot of bounce, not a little bit. On a really wet lie, what I want to do is avoid that leading edge there from coming into the ground at a steep angle with my hands really in front of the ball. This is going to dig into the ground. Like, it's Arizona in the summer, so it's not soft or wet right here. But you can imagine what it would be like. But if that leading edge, I mean, even on this grass, it's not going to be great. So that leading edge with your hands in front, this is a shovel. So you're going to want to avoid that, especially with a wet, soft area. All you really need to do is just know that if I open this face just a little bit, the more I open the face, the more you kind of expose the bounce of the club. That's one way you can add a little bit of bounce to it. Another way is by being very intentional with your hands. I can also just leave my hands in a position like this, where they're almost in line with the ball. And now, when I do that, I deliver the club back with my hands in the same spot. And when I do that, it's going to have the bounce of the club. And the club, you're going to feel it, it's going to skip. It's going to just go and skip right off the turf. Especially when it's hard, you can feel it. So I'll do the first here where just kind of deliver on the hands. Just one in, of course, not on camera. But you're going to be able to just feel that bounce just go through and go right off the turf of it. It's not going to dig because it can't, because you're not letting the leading edge dig into the ground. Wedge isn't going to dig otherwise. If it's really, really wet, what you can do, I suggest, is open the face of the club just a teeny bit. That's going to give you more bounce. So basically, instead of it sitting here where you can see this leading edge could dig, if I open that face, this is now what's going to impact the ground. It's all bounce. And as long as you keep your hands, or avoid your hands from leading like this, it's not going to dig. So this is a pretty hard lie. It's not actually a good one to put a lot of bounce on it, but it's fine. So extra bounce. And just deliver the club with my hands in line so that it's all bounce that's coming through that club. So this is more of a, you don't have to do this on every chip. This is getting into, just made another one, what your lie is going to be like. This is, for me, wet conditions, things like that. That's when I really start really focusing on the bounce, because most of the time you don't even need to do that. Like, you don't need to add extra variables. If you get your setup proper, you shouldn't be chunking and hitting chips fast in the first place. The only time that you can and have to worry about it is when the lie, like anybody could do it. If it's really wet and you've got a sand wedge or a lob wedge in your hand, you should probably be paying attention and opening up the face a little bit to get a little bit more bounce, because that can dig on anybody. But normal course conditions, get your setup correct. You don't need to worry about trying to do the bounce and a bunch of extra things. Get your setup correct. Most of the time you're going to be fine just with that.